All right. Hey, Frank, welcome once again to the second episode. And thank you so much for being kind enough to, give this time for the discussion. I have received some feedback from the last episode that we posted, specifically for people and from communities who are looking into the avenue of partnership and alliances. And I was going through your profile. You have also been talking around to a lot, some other people, giving them advice and suggestions in terms of how to approach the partnership model. Now, I believe we connected about a month and a half past. It has been about that time. Maybe not a lot has evolved in the partnership realm at until that time, but something curious has happened is that when I am having conversations with some of these people, right? Some of these people are like, founders and owners of companies, sizes between anywhere. It can be startups, sizes between 200 or 500 people strong. And a lot of them have expressed intent and interest to enter into the realm of partnership and alliance. They believe that this is a untapped opportunity which has the potential to drastically grow the revenue, and not just the revenue, the ticket size for these businesses as well. Now, there's no specific answer. It doesn't work in a one size fit all. But before answering or giving my advice to these people, I thought that when I'm next connecting with you, I'll possibly try and understand what your experience has been. So if we take a particular scenario, Frank, let's say there's a company, an ISV, right? And they are, let's say, 250 people strong or 300 people strong, and they are already delivering standard business. It can be a digital studio, and they're delivering services to global customers. They're doing good business, and all the resources, because it's a startup, there's not a lot of bench resources. All these resources are properly aligned with their particular skill sets and deliveries, right? Mapped to customer accounts. At this point
Sure.
in time, if this company wants to extend or expand into the partnership world of partnerships and alliances, what should be their approach? Where should, from the founder's perspective, where should he or she get started, and who should they involve in the process?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Abhinav, for having me on again. Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think a lot of companies are in that point, right? They're looking at it going, okay, how do I grow business, exponentially, or how do I ensure, steady revenue streams, things like that. And they're looking at it going, oh, the partner play can help. One thing I would say that, my advice to some of those smaller shops is come up with a plan. Like, what do you want from the partnership? What type of partners do you want? Do you want, just SIs, just system integrators? Do you want full resellers? What do you want? And the reason I say come up with that first is that that's going to dictate the path they go, right? So
Hmm.
if they want system integrators, if they're finding that that is where they need help, just integrating their product with other products, that's fine. Those are a little bit easier to ramp up, right? There's not as much overhead with them. You don't have to train them on your product, the ins and outs, things like that. If you go with a full reseller, well, now you're training implementation staff, potentially you're training sales staff, support staff, marketing. Like there's a whole lot more effort that's put involved in that. And then within that reseller space, the next question is, do you want smaller resellers or do
Mm.
you want big boys? Like
Right.
some of the big players. And each of those has their own unique part as well. The smaller shops, they're going to be a little bit more flexible. They're going to be a little bit more agile. They're going to want to do things the way that you do. They're going to be a little bit more amenable to, okay, tell us what you have done that's worked. Show
Yeah.
us kind of what you're doing. Where the bigger players are going to say, great, we'll add your product to our catalog. You're not going to dictate how we sell. You're not going to
Mm.
dictate how we support. You're not going to dictate how we implement. So it's going to be, two different kind of flavors. And again, that's a spectrum, right? You have your small players and your big boys, and it's going to be all along the way. But I would say first is start with what do you need, and then look at what can you reasonably afford, right? And I know that's not a question that the people want to answer. It's like, how dare this guy tell me that? Well, at
Yeah.
the end of the
Yeah.
day, it comes down to you don't want to go out of business because you're trying to do better business,
Absolutely.
right? So, if you can only afford the SIs, great. start with the SIs, work with them, increase business, then start with the little guys, then go medium, and then go to the bigger players. Um, but if you have the capital and the resources to staff a team of two or three folks that are just going to be finding and recruiting, onboarding partners, so training them, getting contracts signed, getting their first deals, co-selling with them, things like that, then yeah, you can start a little bit further down the road. But I would say, look at what does your cash flow look like? What do the reserves look like?
Mm-hmm.
What is the fiduciary responsibility, right? Is this being driven by stockholders that are going to help fund a new division or a new department to do this? So I think there are a lot of questions, but again, the first thing is always like a plan. What do I want to do?
Right.
Because if you say, "Oh, I want to start with partners," great. Like, do you just put some on your website that says, interested in being a partner? Come be a partner. Okay, then what? Because you're going to get 1,000 emails the first
Absolutely.
day.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how do you know of those 1,000 which ones you want to respond to, which one of those you want to keep in your back pocket, etc.? So that would be kind of in a nutshell that advice is form a plan and then see where it takes you.
No, sure, Frank. I think that absolutely makes sense because, like you mentioned, and the reason I took the example of a startup is because startups are aggressive, right? When it comes to scaling,
Yep.
they are very aspirational when it comes to trying out different approaches, maybe creating a specific product or entering a particular avenue to see how they perform and maybe grow from that particular perspective. So having a plan in place before jumping into execution would definitely make sense. But one specific thing that I have found that a lot of founders struggle with at the planning stage is that they are unable to figure out which is the right approach. A, should they look into the market and try and figure out which kind of service line has a better demand in terms of geography, etc., and then create a partnership model or maybe look for partnerships where this is being which will enable them to target or meet the requirements or the demands of this particular segment, or look into their existing skill sets, the people that they have, the skill sets that they have, and the kind of domain expertise that they have, yeah, servicing the clients for the last many years, and then see which are the partnerships that align with this, and start from there. So, which would you say, Frank, is a better approach of taking this?
Yeah, when I'm looking at a startup, right, or I'm looking at some of those smaller companies, I'm going to go after partners that help with my needs first, right?
Hmm.
So I'm going to look at my skill sets and where maybe my blind spots are, and have
Yeah.
partners that can help with that. So if I look at it and I say, you know what, I'm having trouble getting market penetration. All right, I'm going to look at sales organizations. I'm going to look at marketing organizations. I'm going to look at referral partners. Like, that's who I'm going to be looking at. If they're saying, you know what, we have a 2-year backlog for our product. Okay, I'm looking for professional services or a delivery partner. If they're saying, hey, delivery we got, but determining where our product is going to go or doing some of that core foundational development. Okay, now I'm looking for a dev shop, right? And each of those have a different skill set.
Hmm.
A sales organization, they're really good at sales. They're not great at development. They're not great at supporting it.
True
They're
that. Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
not great at consulting. But, if I need consulting help, I'm going to go to a consulting firm that's going to help me. They might not help me sell, but again, so what is the biggest hurdle you're having to growth, right? So that kind of second option you had there is, I'm going to look at targeted partners. I'm not going to look at the market necessarily, but I'm going to look at where does my company need help, and who do I have that I can bring on board that's going to help accelerate or fill that um, blind spot, take care of that issue so that I can move forward and focus then on what's the next one? What's the next one? Okay, now it's time to look at what partnerships are out there in the market. Now I need to take it on. Now I need to take on partnerships to help me get into a new market or something like that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
first, I'm going to start by the phrase is like get my house in order, right? I'm going to start by making sure that across the line, everything that I'm doing is good for my business.
That kind of lines up, Frank. Reasonably thinking that would, that should be what the founder or the CEO should be focusing on.
Yep.
Now, basically leveraging on the experience and the skill that you already have, and then test out the waters. Uh, Now, let's say they have identified the segmentation, they have done the planning, right? They have also decided to maybe, depending on the skill set and the experience, that's the avenue that they want to proceed with. Now, at this juncture, they may also have they will be faced with another dilemma, is whether from a founder's perspective, or a owner's perspective, and I'm talking about ISVs here, whether they should allocate a particular amount of budget, create a separate department or a team at the very least who will be dedicated, because for a company who has not any experience in the partnership environment, it's going to take a lot of time and a lot of testing around to see, basically, filter out the options and the opportunities that align with their service line, and then weed out the rest of it. So a lot of dedicated time and energy is gonna be needed. So should the founder focus on a particular, maybe invest in a particular department or a team, and then take it from there? Because a lot of, depending on the kind of partnership that they're doing, and if it's a tech partnership, right? It's a different product or a different framework that they're working with. So there's a lot of knowledge building also that needs to go in, right? Adoption to what
Yep.
specifically the kind of problems this particular product or this, frameworks solves. Is that the approach that the founders should be advised to take, or maybe they, identify a couple of people within the team who are more, aligned, or who have aspirations to move towards this, and then, map a particular, maybe an external consultant to work with this internal set of team for a period of maybe a couple of months, and then see where it goes, and then, take steps accordingly.
Excuse me. Yeah, that's a tough question, right? Is do I staff the team internally or do I find someone who has some market experience and bring them on?
Yeah.
Um, it's gonna depend. Excuse me. I think that, you know, having the right people in that partnership role is that's the cornerstone of your partner program is who you have in that role. So if you have people that are, charismatic, able to build
Mm,
rapport
mm.
easily, able to learn quickly,
Yeah.
because this
Yeah.
is something that the company hasn't done before, right? So it's
Yes.
it's something they're
Yes.
going to have to figure out. They're going to have to, essentially fail fast. Hey, I tried this, it doesn't work, I'm
Mm,
pivoting. I
mm,
tried
mm, mm.
this, it didn't work, I'm pivoting. Um, I would say that having those people internally is definitely a plus, but having a consultant or someone that has gone through it before come in and say, hey guys, here are some of the major pitfalls that you have to look out for. Yeah, I've looked at your partner plan or your partner vision. These are some suggestions I have for you. I think that's gonna that's worth its weight in gold, right? So I think because a lot of it is experience, and especially when you get into the partner world, a lot of it is networking, right? Who do I know at X company? Who do I know at Y company? Hey, I'm over here, this is a good product. Let's see what we can do here. Um, so I think, trying to build those relationships while you're building a partner program is tough. I'm not saying that it can't be done, but it's going to be a lot easier to say, bring in one person or two people that already have some of that market presence, or partner presence to help lead your team internally. I'm not saying, okay, hey, it's this a startup and you have to go hire 10 people that have never worked for your company and bring them on, take on all that risk. You can do it with people internally,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
maybe you have people internally that did it at a last job that came over and they have the experience. Leverage that, right? Because who you have running that and kind of steering the ship is a very important and impactful decision to your partner program and the
Agreed.
success. So I know I'm not really giving an answer. I'm kind of talking around it because it depends on the people, right? You want to
True.
have
True.
that person who can do it. And if you need help or you don't have that internally, absolutely bring someone out. And and that's your first partner, right? I mean, if you
Absolutely.
think about it, your first partner is finding somebody to help you build your partners. So
Absolutely.
I think that is, that is something to think about and to talk through as you're putting together your plan is who do we have internally to help with this? Do we need to bring in someone externally? How are we going to find them? Who are we going to work with? What is their presence, etc.
That makes sense. And Frank, like you said, it's not that you're, not giving the answer. There is no right answer for, the correct answer for a company may not be the correct one for another one, right? It entirely depends
Absolutely.
on what they're looking to achieve. But I'll come back to a very important point that you mentioned over there, Frank, is that a very important aspect of the entire, partnership model would be networking, right? Now, a lot of people are doing this virtually. And when I say virtually, I don't mean that, not coming to your office, but the office is not where the partners are, right? They're maybe in different cities across the world. So how does somebody who is trying to establish, let's say, an alliance for their company, working with different partners, some are working, some are, may not be that great, and they're looking for other opportunities. How does this person or this team go on, with the networking efforts, especially given the restrictions of a virtual world?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough nut to crack. What I would say is, um, trade shows. Trade shows are huge.
Okay.
Getting some of the face to face and not necessarily the show itself, but the before, the after events,
Mm,
the
mm,
lunches, the breakfast. Like, if you're sitting at a table with everybody you already know, you're at the wrong table if you're trying to build a partner program, right? Like, it's the whole, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. If you're sitting with everybody you know, you're not growing your network, right? Like, get out, meet
absolutely.
people, talk to them about their product or what they do or their business or what are their needs. I think that, part of networking and especially part of partner programs is everybody always approaches partners as what can they do for me, right?
Mm,
What can they do for me?
mm,
The other part of it is what can you do for them, right? Like some of the best partners that we have are partners that the conversation started as, you know what? We have a way to help you and augment your business. And then they came and helped us, right? So I think that there's an important part there. But back to kind of how do we network virtually? LinkedIn is always good. Kind of these podcasts, these video casts, always good. Um, and it's a small thing, but when you're on a call with someone, whether it's Teams, whether it's Zoom, whether it's Google Meet, whatever, turn on the camera. I think that's the
absolutely.
hard part. So many
Absolutely.
times I get on a call and it's just this floating static head, and it's like, man, I can't see facial expressions. I can't see any emotions or reactions to what I'm saying. And it's really hard to build that
Do that.
relationship and the rapport. And it's a simple thing, but I mean, I'm using a virtual background. You're using a virtual background. I mean, yeah, it's easy enough to do, but it's a small thing that really helps build that
Absolutely.
relationship. Um,
Absolutely.
and again, as much as you can face to face is great, but with things being remote work, companies moving to decentralized to get the proper talent, um, get time, turn on the cameras, talk to them about, hey, what trade shows are you going at? Oh, you're going to this one too? Great. Let's meet up and let's meet up at the hotel and grab a drink, or let's get breakfast together or something like that, and find ways to interact with each other. Because that's what's going to set it apart, right? And that's where I talk about the right people is you need that personality that's going to go out and they're going to make things happen
True.
and they're going to
True.
make those introductions. They're going to have those conversations instead of waiting for the partners to come to them, right? Like go out,
Absolutely.
have the conversation, turn your camera on.
And so, Frank, you also mentioned a usual approach should be that when somebody is approaching, partners or let's say any particular person in that matter, especially in events and trade shows, the approach should be, what can I do for you, right? That should be the first
Yep.
foot forward. And that's a given, right? It makes a lot of sense. But in the current, market, where people are masking their approach to value, or their intent to selling as an approach to value. So when I
Right.
maybe let's say I reach out to you and I say, hey, Frank, this is what I can do for you. Can we take? So that by default, I'm not saying always, but a lot of times has an intonation of our sales to it, that something is coming. It's not just a value that I'm talking about. It's basically a value added service that I'm talking about. Uh, like, how does we move past that barrier? Like, I know there's no easy answer to it. It, basically boils down to, somebody's interpersonal skills, how they tackle those kinds of rejections, whether verbally or, in the sense of body language, people becoming stiff or not too open. It comes down to their individual skills, but just wanted to understand your thoughts on this one, Frank.
Yeah, and I would say, there is that innate sense of sales, right? Like I'm selling my product or this, I'm selling this partnership idea to you, and I'm saying,
Hmm.
let's be partners because it's mutually beneficial, right? I know generally what you and your company does. Here's how we fit into that, or here's how you fit into our company. And the reason I say to come at it from here's how we can help you is nobody wants to go into business with a company that says, here's how you're going to help me. Like
Yeah,
you come be my partner and you're going to do the work because you're going to help me.
yeah.
Right? They want a reciprocal agreement. And a lot of times they know what's in it for you,
Mm,
right? It's
mm.
it's more sales, it's more revenue, XYZ. They know what you're wanting from them. So
Right.
you have to kind of illustrate what is the reciprocal side because they might not know the ins and outs of your business and nor should they necessarily, but they might not know your product, they might not know the company structure, what services you have to offer, things like that. So what I would say is come from a point of information providing, right? Here's what we do, here's how we can help you, here's what we can do, here's what we're looking for out of the partnership. And it's going to show that other company a couple of things. Number one, it's going to show that you're invested or committed to a working partner program. Number two, it's going to show that you're not just in it for yourselves, that you're looking for a mutually beneficial program or
Cool.
partnership. And number three, it's going to show that you care a little bit about them because in order to have that conversation, you at least have to Google them to find out what they
Yeah,
do.
absolutely.
Right. So you've already taken the first couple steps and put your best foot forward and said, hey, I know you guys are in the XYZ industry. I know you do these type of things. Have you thought about working with a company like us that does these to help bolster this offering of yours? Right. So all of a sudden they're sitting there going, oh, well, yeah, that's a good idea. Like, yeah, that helps us, maybe achieve one of our bigger goals of
True.
market penetration or delivery or XYZ. But yeah, you could help us in that way, and that'd be great. Yeah, let's get into a partnership. And then you can say, okay, here's what we would want. We want to be able to sell into your client book, or we want you to mention us or XYZ. But the initial part of that partnership was founded or based on let's help each other, right? I've done my homework. I know a little bit about you. I've already kind of helped figure out where the benefit is for you. I know where the benefit is for me. Let's let's get into this. So I think
Absolutely.
that's where they come at it from here's how we can help you
Mm.
because it takes the burden off of them to figure out a lot of that partnership stuff.
Absolutely. So I think, Frank, it's very important to keep the communication clear, because a lot of time what happens is, and just hold on a sec, I think I moved on to another window. So a lot of time what happens is when we are reaching out to somebody, right? Even in networking events, and talking about a value, like this person for a longer period of time has no clue what are we arriving at. So keeping the conversation clear, the agenda clear would be paramount when it comes to striking up a
Yep,
conversation with somebody. Now, one
absolutely.
quick question, and from the perspective of the startup, right? They made a plan. They kind of figured out that they may go ahead with their internal team and align a consultant, and then they work out, do networking, and try and work out, and possibly they also have a onboarding for with a couple of companies that they have partnered with, right? Now, then comes a phase of adoption. Now, the next logical phase for this company would be to sell the product or the services of this partnered company, not directly until and unless they're a reseller, but maybe they're selling their own services which align with this particular company. So I'll take an example. Let's say I own a company and it is partnered with AWS, right? So now I'm not a reseller for AWS. I could be, but that's not the partnership I've entered into. I'm a ISV and I am doing config like any company who is hosting on AWS. I have a team of developers who will get the configuration and the setting and the monitoring system and everything done for this customer, right? But for to acquire these customers, I have to reach out to people and basically sell not just AWS, but a combination of AWS plus my services, right? For this company, for my company or my team, this is an entirely, even if I have an existing sales team, this is an entirely new domain. So, in terms of the terminologies that they're using, in terms of identifying the ICPs, in terms of identifying what their challenges are or bottlenecks are, and of course, they will be doing their due diligence in terms of research, etc. But even so, it still forms a kind of a hurdle for these companies, even after partnering to, if I may say so, for a go-to market. So they may take their own sweet time to, get the word out and since they are the ones who have, it is especially valid in the initial years of the partnership, these are people or companies who have just started out. And if we contrast that with other companies, other partners of, let's say, AWS in this example, who have been doing this for years now. So they have a lot of expertise, they have a lot of experience, they have a lot of testimonials to back up their claims or their, services. So how does a particular company or a team survive through this phase of uncertainty while they're acquiring new logos and new business?
Yeah, I mean it's a tough sea to navigate, right? And what I would say is when you're looking to expand out, right, and get some of those the bigger clients or add new logos, things like that, pace yourself on that, right? Like I wouldn't say, oh, I'm gonna go shoot for the moon right away. Like
Mm,
yeah,
mm.
okay, let's take some steps, right? First we
Realistic
got to get out of the
goals.
atmosphere, then we got to circle it, things like that. So start small, but also this is where partners can be absolutely paramount to helping you because they can say, hey guys, I know this company. Like I've worked with them, I know the people there, I've seen the products they turn out. I can vouch for them.
Yeah,
Right. And as much as you can push for what we call kind of warm introductions, right? Where the person who's been working with them for a long time is on the phone and they introduce you, they bring in the call to a conversation. A testimonial is great if it handles or if it carries the right person, the right title, the right words. Like a testimonial can be great, but inherently there's no emotion, there's no kind of validity checking necessarily, right? And there's no kind of opportunity for conversation with it. It's a very one-sided, it's like a billboard, like do this because it's amazing and I'm endorsing this person. Okay, if you're a small startup and you don't have those people, you're not getting the big name celebrities or the big companies, things like that. Leverage what you have, right? Get some warm introductions. Talk to the customers that you have and say, hey, do you think we're a fit for anybody else? We now can do stuff on Amazon Web Services. We just partnered with AWS. Do you know anybody that could use this in your circle? Get the
mm.
referrals, throw them a bone. We'll give you a month off of your subscription fee or, a
Yeah,
2% finder fee or something like that. But leverage what you have. And as a startup, word of mouth is huge, and getting somebody to vouch for you on the phone with their customer, whether you're there or not, but those warm referrals, the warm introductions are huge. That's how you're going to grow it because it's literally somebody saying, I know this person, I can vouch for
absolutely.
them,
Absolutely.
right? Rather than go to their website and they type some things and said this person said it, not saying they're not true, but you don't have a conversation with that testimonial, right? You can't say, okay,
Exactly.
well, yeah, you're a little bit smaller, you're newer to the game. Here's the concern I have. What do you have to say about that? And I can say, well, here are our plans for growth. Here are our plans for sustainability. Here's how we're doing X, Y, and Z. Here's another X factor that we can bring to you that this bigger company they're too big to do that. They're not going to personalize your service. So, you know, get in the conversation, start small, start slow. Um, a hundred little fish are just as good as one big fish
True
kind of
that.
thing. That's the advice I would give is you can get the bigger ones, but you got to get the smaller ones first. Um, and we deal with this on the partner side too, is when you go after a big partner, if you don't have experience, that big partner isn't going to give you the time of day. It's the same with the customers. They want to see how you handle the small and medium partners, small and medium companies before you get the big partners, the big
True,
companies.
true that. True that.
Because if you can be successful with them and build a track record of success, you can be successful with me. If you haven't built that track record, that's a big risk for me to take.
Absolutely. That makes sense. That absolutely makes sense. Frank, I think, if I'm not wrong, and I'll see what the others have to say about this, I think the kind of insights and information you shared in this conversation it was wonderful the last time we spoke, but this is like 5 or 10 times, more information that you have shared. And a lot of these people who are asking, like, not all of these questions are uniquely mine, and I'll not take that credit. A lot of these questions are, from people who are trying to enter this, a
Sure.
demography or this trying to take advantage of the situation. So I'll be sharing this and I'll definitely keep you posted, Frank. It's wonderful to host you again. I fear that I may again reach out to you, even if not immediately, but eventually for
Absolutely.
I can
Absolutely.
I can foresee people asking for, hey, wait, where did you ask for that? You should have asked for more information on that. But again, Frank, it's lovely hosting you as always. Thank you. You have been wonderful. Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. You bet. Thanks.
Thank you so much.